rate of march. Nice. Well, okay. So I'm gonna tell you a couple of things that I did while I was offline, I guess. Let's see. Okay, looks like everything works. Okay, so yeah.
Wow,
A couple of things
I've
is
never seen nice things
I
like
defeated
these.
this couple of dudes that were here. Couple of rocks with this team, by the way. Which is quite pop.
That was just bad luck.
And I cleared up this stuff. Which, by the way, couple of things I learned. First of all, I moved this one from where it was here to there, and it moved it a little bit closer. Yeah, I did it with the tech that I just demonstrated, which is just a ledge. Unlatch from the stuff after the camera is controlled to make it actually working in the correct way. That way made it possible to get a zipline here and lift up, which is way more usable if I place a zipline up there. I still have no clue how to get to this upper side, but I know for certain that from this platform it's not too much movement. Just gotta place this thing here. You can take it with yourself. But here you are. On the other side. Unfortunately, it seems like
Hey.
yeah. It seems that jumping is not really a great option here. I mean, I have to jump. Is what I meant to say. Something like that. Okay, what do I want? I want this thing. This thing in particular.
Hold on. What if someone's not ready for it?
Zay Hubert.
I'm in the flow.
We'll see this through.
Perfect as this win.
Incoming! Strike man!
You really have to use it.
Rolling thunder!
Perfect as this win.
Don't blink! Right here's our chance!
Perfect as this win.
The optimal path! Incoming! Unknown hazard! Action! Eyes on the prize!
Perfect as this win.
The optimal path! Don't blink!
There's an
Am I looking alright from this angle? Behave, Rust! I was fast-forwarding through everything. I learned fast, so makes no difference. Let me see. Where should I be gathering my data this time?
Oh. They are rotated a certain way. All of them. Strength, will, intellect, attack. That's not what I want. Besides, I already have this one. Strength, crit. Main crit. then new experience evaluations. No, that's false. Let's go. Maybe. Push until you hear.
Beautifully done! I'm amazed! One more shot! It's a bit cold. Get ice! Ready to play! Go, Monkey! One more shot! I'm feeling much better. It's a bit cold. Attention, please. Power shot.
Let's kind of play real ones. Let's see. Get main crypt. Main crypt Twilight. I bought those 3 things. It's nice. How curious. By the way,
Over here, Endman!
what's up with...
Oh, I'm bringing quite a few things. Over here, Endman!
Travis.
Over here, Endman!
Intellect agility. Maybe. Intellect will. Critical rate. Agility. Oh, not those. They look the same, all 3 of them.
Behave, Frosty Bitey!
Intellect agility. Wait, basic attack damage bonus. Intellect agility, crit rate. Well then. Makes sense.
Over here, Endman! Oh, I'm bringing... Give me a proper challenge.
I'm not sure what this directly means, but it seems that it is quite important.
Too easy. Give me a proper challenge.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. Hi, to yet another episode of You Thought Last Stygian Onslaught was the worst one so far? Think again. New Stygian is out. 2 bosses that are making their first appearance in Stygian, 1 boss that's coming back. The boss that's coming back is the Secret Source Automaton Overseer device. Well, this is the Skirk Shill. The Skirk Shill is back, and if you were playing when the last Skirk Shill was around, you'll know that at the time, it was one of the harder ones, and it was very, very, very difficult to do without some form of actual cryo team, whether it be a Skirk team or some sort of weird bull using Escoffier. That's still the case, but whereas last time this boss was the most restrictive of them, this time maybe it's not the least restrictive, but I would say that it's the easiest like solve, I guess, because well, Shield Impact is in full force right now, and oh boy. Let's just start by giving a little bit of information about this boss, and then we'll move on to the 2 new ones. He spawns in, and once he's fully spawned in, he'll deploy 2 beams sideways and have a flow momentum meter. Now, you can reduce this meter by hitting it with cryo.
Fulfill our pact.
And once it's empty, the beams disappear. And if you don't hit it, well, the beams start spinning faster. And eventually, he spawns
This is trouble.
a bit more,
Am I...
and you're gonna die. While the flow momentum is above a certain threshold, which is around 10% of the visible circle, your attacks do a lot less damage, as you can see. My Skirk right now is hitting for like 1k, 2k, whatever. And then once you get it below, she starts actually hitting for the 17-ish k that she's supposed to be hitting on this build without any actual setup. You have to bring cryo. You don't really have the option not to. And it's not because the beams are scary, it's because it just has way too many resistances otherwise. Now there is another way to...
I can't help but feel that it's pure perfection. PAC directed production is no longer a cold, repetitive chore, but a living, breathing system of intertwining process loops. Absolutely ingenious. Enderman, I've got to try this. Come on, please. Oh, thanks. Don't worry. Even if it's a teensy bit weird, I'll still treasure it forever.
Really feels like she doesn't have enough range. At least in this particular character. Doesn't have anything. Our also doesn't have anything. Okay, let's go. Please do it. 6 hours.
reduces resistances, and it's the Night Soul mechanic. But the Night Soul mechanic is nerfed in Stygian so that it's not going to be helpful for you because they hate you and they want you to suffer. So if you have a character that has Night Soul and you are next to the enemy while you're in Night Soul,
Get to work.
it starts filling up. You can see visually the things start glowing, and once it's all filled up, it starts using this attack. And this attack is very scary. The beams follow you, and if you want to be like attacking, you'll basically like be forced to waste a lot of time dodging, and if you don't, you die. And eventually, after about a minute, it stops, and then it's just a normal mode where it doesn't have increased resistances and you can just hit it normally. And once it's been in that normal mode for a while, or once you get it below a certain HP threshold, it will go back into the initial mode. Technically, if you have an Omega Whale team, you might be able to one-shot it within this phase, but that's like C6R5 level of DPS requirements. And also technically, you can brute force it without cryo with the Night Soul mechanic, because once it does start doing the beam attack, it gets reduced resistances, but those reduced resistances are still incredibly high. So again, right, it's like basically C6 levels of DPS requirements in order to actually brute force it that way. Basically, you have to bring cryo. And it's not just that you have to bring cryo, you have to bring a lot of cryo. What fills up the meter is not cryo application, it's cryo hits, or I guess what prevents the meter from filling up. I'll just be saying fills it up because it's less words, but just know that what I mean when I say characters filling up the meter is just them reducing the flow momentum. But as you can see, every time Escoffier hits, the flow momentum goes down a little bit. Every cryo hit makes it go down a little bit. The problem is, well, as you can tell, Escoffier by herself is not actually enough to even outpace its natural regeneration. And Escoffier is actually one of the faster cryo hitters. She hits every second. There are some characters that can hit faster. Lila can hit faster. Obviously, cryo on-fielders can hit faster. But as a general rule, you're pretty much always going to have to bring 2 cryo characters here. Another thing I want to mention is what can happen if you are bringing Night Soul characters with cryo.
A little of this. Show no mercy. Suffer the wrath of Eatley.
So as you can see, right, after a little bit, we empty the meter. That's cool. But we also have the Night Soul mechanic filling up, and it's about to be full.
To the freezer. Fulfill our pact.
Rise with the sun!
You two. Time to end them. A little of
Okay, why is it not entering the mode?
Show no mercy.
I guess I'll wait a little bit here. Okay, there we go.
Eat Papa. Get a dash of frosting.
Okay. As you might be able to tell here, it has spawned the things, the like beams of Hydro.
Yeah.
But as long as you're keeping it within that low resistance range and you're keeping it at 0, basically,
maybe
it
I
won't
won't
attack you, even
press
if
on
it's
those
entered the
things.
Night Soul mode. Now, generally, most of the cryo characters, if you're bringing 2 of them, you'll be able to have the resistances be low during your uptime. However, if one of your cryo characters or if your carry is an Atlan character that's going to enter Night Soul mode, keeping it relatively low isn't enough. You have to keep it at 0 consistently.
Up to 3.
And not just during your uptime, but during your setup too, because otherwise it's going to start the attack and it still fires if he just starts it. And so if you're going to be bringing Night Soul here, having a cryo character that is hitting almost enough to prevent it from filling up by itself with full uptime like Escoffier is going to be more meaningful. Characters like Kea that hit quite fast, but without full uptime. Same for Iona if you give her sack bow. Can be good at setting up a rotation, but they're gonna struggle to keep it low enough for the Night Soul version not to murder you, basically. All of this to
Why are
say,
you
what you want to
idling
do
here?
is you want to bring any
Come on,
cryo carry
let's go
in a
to the
freeze
bridge.
team with Escoffier, or
Then
even
you
a
can tell me.
non-freeze team. Any cryo carry with Escoffier is pretty much just going to be fine. This includes Varka. Varka is a character that is kind of pathetic in cryo teams, but we have to understand that this boss
Conventions of
is
socialization.
balanced in a way where even a character like Risley with Escoffier is
May
going to
I
be able to
inspect your
clear.
weapon
And as much as
manual?
Varka's not a great character, he's not a great character for 2026. He's still
I
not
am
Risley.
grateful.
But yeah, pretty much any cryo character with Escoffier is going to be able to get there.
Surprise,
Without
everyone!
Escoffier, it's a bit
I
harder.
picked some-
Now, Varka will still be able to do it with
Look at what I brought,
non-premium
Edmund.
cryo team options, but it's going to require more min-max builds and gameplay. Cryo characters in general also have an inherent advantage here, which is that the Secret Source Automaton has
got you a
reduced
little
resistances
something for
to
your mission.
cryo
Hope you
when
like
the
it.
meter is very low. All of this to say, if you basically have
Nice to
either
meet
Skirt
you,
or
Administrator.
Escoffier, this boss
I get
isn't
training
going to...
from Operation Team Z7. Oh, it's okay. Wow, a gift for me? Is it a reward for something I did, or... be too much of a problem. If you don't, but you have very powerful characters that can slot in cryo on their team, you'll probably still be able to brute force it, but it'll be much more difficult. And if you have no ways of implementing cryo teammates in your teams, you're kind of good, right? If you don't have pyro carries that can be played in melt teams built, or characters that can be used in cryo teams, like cryo carries or hydro carries, like Navidad, for example, this is going to be really rough for you. And there is no way of brute forcing this without cryo. You're just completely cooked without cryo. That being said, I would say that it's still not even close to the hardest one. I don't know if I'd call it the easiest one. I'd say that it's probably in the middle. I think the Mandragora is easier, but it's also a lot more straightforward than the Mandragora. The Mandragora has a lot of annoying stuff. So let's start talking about the Mandragora. The Mandragora is the Varka Shill boss. Because it's the Varka Shill boss, for a 2026 release of a Stygian boss, this is relatively easy. That being said, that doesn't mean it's free. There's still annoying bullshit with this boss. So let's talk about its mechanics. The Mandragora boss spawns in with another meter. I don't know what this one's called. It's probably written somewhere. I don't care that much. It doesn't really matter. And this meter goes down over time. It takes about 40 seconds to completely empty from full. And once this meter is empty, he will spawn a bunch of mini Mandragoras, mushrooms, fungi. I don't know. But you're about to see it right here. I guess they're mini Mandragoras. And you have to kill all of them. There's another meter that shows up under the boss's health bar during this time, and that's basically your time limit to kill them. And it's about, how much was that, 25 seconds-ish? And after that, if you didn't kill all of them during that time, it just goes back to the initial phase. Well, the thing about the initial phase is... Right, we can see the damage that we do here is not very high because the resistances are really high. In other words, in order to kill this boss, you basically have to be able to deal with this wave of bullshit. And if even one of them survives, the boss will get all the resistances back. During the first phase, that takes about 40 seconds, if you hit the boss with either Pyro or Electro, you don't need to trigger Overload, just either Pyro or Electro, it progresses the meter a little bit more quickly. Brace yourselves.
Stay.
Time for takeoff.
Let's light it up. The story has only just...
What?
Okay.
Everybody stand back.
Think you can get away?
But yeah, so once you've killed all the small guys, whatever they're called, you will enter basically the same as the first phase,
Story has only just.
but without the increased resistances.
Teamwork is strict.
Here we go. Time for takeoff.
Thunder. Up the ante. Leave it to me. A turning point. Let's light it up.
Think you can get away?
Everybody stand. Burn.
Wanted to be a little mean with my Bennett buff there. And you just repeat this over and over. Let's talk about the ways you can deal with this. Obviously, as you may have noticed, one of the ways is using a Venti. Honestly, this boss is supposed to be Varka Shield, but it's more Venti Shield than Varka Shield. Varka without Venti kind of struggles to get through the AoE phase because he kind of has a good amount of stagger on his attacks, so you ungroup the enemies. And Venti is kind of the only character that properly keeps them grouped for long enough for you to kill them on a character that does relatively lower damage like Varka. So, what are your options? Bring as much pyro and electro application as possible, and just try to get it the first down phase, the first like mobbing phase, as quickly as possible. Then use a grouper, kill them, you're fine. Very good. And then you just repeat. This is like the default option. This is what most teams are going to be trying to do. Depending on what you have, you might be more reliant on having a character like Venti that's just a better grouper. Right? Characters like Varka rely more on Venti. Characters that have stronger and like front-loaded damage, like Maoika, for example, can get away pretty easily with just using Sucrose or Kazuha. Any Pyro or Electro character that has a team that doesn't suffer too much from putting a grouper in there can do this boss, as long as they're not like completely cooked in the multi-target situation. If you don't have Venti and you're struggling with grouping, remember you can use Sacrificial Sword on Kazuha if you have him. If you're using Sucrose, make sure you give her enough energy recharge. You'll care a lot more about the grouping, about the ability to have the burst. Yeah, that's basically your first option. Your second option, I think, is a pretty funny one, and it's to just bring a grouper to a team that does not have Pyro or Electro. Now, we have talked about how you can accelerate the first down by a good amount with Pyro or Electro, but really, if you don't accelerate the first down, you don't have Pyro or Electro on your team at all, there kind of just isn't a second down, because the amount of time that it takes to go down on the second rotation is obviously going to be longer if you don't have Pyro or Electro, right? On your first down, getting through the meter faster, it matters a lot, right? Because it has very high resistances, you can't really do any damage to it. So you want to get through it as quickly as possible. But on the second one, it doesn't matter anymore because it doesn't regain its resistances unless you've missed some mini Mandragoras during the down phase. And because of that, you can actually bring teams that really have no business being used here, like Zabai teams, for example. Zabai is not the only character, right? But Nefer can't really do this because this enemy's very high Dender resistances. And the other good characters that could potentially brute force this tend to struggle
Brace yourselves.
to justify bringing groupers in their teams. But yeah, so the strategy here is you just basically stare at him for the first 40 seconds of the fight, and then at like 23-ish seconds, you can start your setup.
Time for takeoff. Yeah.
Group them, and with your grouper, if you have a good enough damage dealer, you're not really struggling. To deal the damage because they're very squishy. Because again, right, they're balanced for Varka to be able to clear. So like the actual good carries are not gonna have a problem here. And you end up being able to kill the Mandragora before it even gets a second down because the next down is slower. Ooh, I missed the crit Harbinger. But as you can see, right, we still have basically over a full minute of actual damage dealing ability because the mobbing phase, all the mini Mandragoras, a portion of the damage the mini Mandragoras take is dealt to the big one. So if you're hitting them in AoE, it's basically just as if you were hitting the big one in terms of damage you're dealing. And your last option is to hope and pray that your team without a grouper can AoE the baby phase well enough. So you can use a character like Skirk, and you can try to position your Skirk burst so that it one-shots them. Again, right? They're balanced around Varka DPS, so their total HP is relatively low. So even suboptimal gameplay in terms of DPS on the good carries like Skirk that front loads damage and has better AoE, right? Like using Skirk burst, it's kind of just enough to one-shot the wave. And you can actually use Yelan to group them a little bit. And if you're struggling, you can even bring Sackbow on Yelan because it's not even a bad weapon on her. Fab tends to be better, but it's not that much better. So if the Sackbow helps you get your grouping that you otherwise wouldn't get, then yeah, it's worth using. Realistically, pretty much any team with Venti gets through, as long as it's not awful. Venti carry gets through, Varka gets through, good carry with Venti, even though he's not doing anything in the team, gets through. If you don't have Venti, you can do Mono Pyro with Mawika, Mono Pyro with Arlecchino, with another grouper. And if you, I mean, everyone has Sucrose, put the Sucrose in the bag. Yeah, more specific tips, if you're using Venti, foregoing his usual build that like maybe builds attack sands, maybe doesn't use Fav, and just building as much energy recharge as possible can make it so that you can have your first burst on the very first rotation. And if you have the first burst very early, you can use the burst as a way to hit with Pyro. A Pyro absorbed Venti burst hits with Pyro quite a lot. And so because that basically ends up speeding up your first phase by like maybe even 10 seconds, it's generally worth just building Venti on full ER with a Fav though. And finally, we have Knuckle Duckle. Now, listen, I have nothing against Aino. I'm sure she's I can't even say anything positive. Why would she create this? Why would she do this to us? This is Aino's fault. She made Knuckle Duckle, and I'm not okay. Yeah, this Knuckle Duckle boss is something. This is basically the equivalent to the dog on the last. Just like the dog on the last Stygian, it is shilling Binefa. The dog was a bit more flexible, right? You could do any of the lunar carries. Here, it's lunar charge only. In exchange for that, the DPS requirement is a tiny little bit lower. You still have ways of brute forcing it without lunar, and they're still just as difficult in terms of DPS requirements, except now your lunar teams that aren't Flynn's or Inefa are gonna have to do that too. I have gotten a couple players with against Knuckle Duckle with teams other than lunar charge, but honestly, it's a night and day difference. Anyways, let's talk about its mechanics. Very first thing Knuckle Duckle does, it'll spawn some mini ducks and it'll get a shield. And while it's shielded, it can technically take damage, I think, but it's basically nothing. And what you want to do is you want to kill these duckies, duck thingies, and whatnot. Triggering Electro Charge or Lunar Charge fills up a meter above their head, and once you've done it enough, they will get launched towards Knuckle Duckle itself and reduce its shield by a certain amount, and you need to kill all the ducks to break the shield. And there is no hitting the shield directly to brute force it. Like, you have to deal with the mini ducks no matter what. The lunar charge damage that you deal to these things is increased. So not only do you not have to actually fully kill them with lunar charge, but also it's easier to kill them and you'll deal more damage to them. The amount of damage that Knuckle Duckle takes when the mini ducks get launched at it, when you kill the mini ducks or trigger enough electro charge or lunar charge against them, is proportional to the amount of damage you've dealt. So the more damage you deal to them, the better. There's 5 ducks and it's 20%. So if you're hitting in full AoE, you'll be able to convert all of your damage, basically. Thing is, this boss has 13 million HP in Fearless. Quick reminder, 2 patches ago, we had the gravity boss that gave you 600% attack when you jump, and that one also had 13 million HP. This one doesn't give you 600% attack. So the DPS requirement is pretty damn high if you're not taking advantage of the increased lunar charge damage. You need to trigger, I believe it's either 10 lunar charge or 20 electro charge to insta-kill the duckies, but you don't really care about doing that in the lunar teams because, well, you'll generally be killing them in time anyway. And the biggest problem with Knuckle Duckle for the non-lunar teams isn't that, like, they don't really have a way of just dealing enough damage. There's quite a few teams that can brute force through 13 million. It's that the second time that it spawns the duckies is a certain amount of time after you've killed the first wave of duckies, which means if you take longer to kill the first wave of duckies, it might spawn the second wave of duckies with like 20 seconds left on the clock. And with 20 seconds left on the clock, most teams won't be able to kill the duckies. 20 seconds is just not enough. And the DPS, or the damage to Knuckle Duckle, that is dealt in proportion to the damage you dealt to the duckies, only happens when you kill them. So if you don't have enough damage to kill them on the second shield phase, then as soon as it shields up a second time, you're cooked. Let me show you in practice what that looks like.
Stabilize. While the light shines bright, light compels you.
Be cleansed. Smite the dust. Smite the dust. Surge.
Gather. Go get him, Aiden. Be gone, Shadow of Darkness.
The sky clears, the blaze moon shines.
He took a lot of damage, lost my Harbinger, but we're not actually trying to clear, we're just trying to show how it works. So it's fine.
Lofty wisdom will show us the way. Smite the dust.
It's so far.
Gather. Be gone, Shadow of Darkness.
A moonlit night for all.
Be cleansed. Smite the dust.
If you just look at the progress of the health bar,
Divine light, shield them.
it's pretty obvious that if we keep going like this, we will actually be able to kill it in 2 more rotations here.
Lofty wisdom will show us the way.
But the problem is we don't get to do 2 more rotations because here we end up with only 9 seconds. If we had been able to hit the Knuckle Duckle directly for the remaining time, well, maybe not at this attempt because I was a little slow in the first wave, but it definitely would have been doable. In other words, you need to be able to actually be hitting all of the duckies pretty reliably while also having really high DPS if you want to get through this without Lunar Charge. For me, that's basically just only doable on Mawika or Varessa on my account. Comparatively, I can do Binefo with Fischl Sucrose and get through with like 20 seconds to spare. It says Electro characters are favored. That's a lie. The default version of Knuckle Duckle, the one that you see in Abyss, the one that you see in Overworld, the duckies have increased resistances to everything except Electro. So if you want to deal with them, you have to either take advantage of the Electro Charge mechanic or brute force them with an Electro character. That's not the case in this one, so it doesn't really matter. You do reduce the Electro resistance when you down him, but it's honestly not even by that much. Or it's not that it's not by that much, is that it doesn't last for very long, so it doesn't really matter. It's just another thing that makes the Lunar Charge teams a little bit better, and a tiny little improvement for the non-Lunar Electro teams, but it's not really a big deal. If, like, you have a bunch of the characters that are good for this Stygian, but you don't know who to put where. I would say priority number 1, you need to have some sort of cryo team for this. There is no brute forcing it without cryo. And so if your only cryo team that can do this is like Melt Arlecchino, for example, or Melt Mawika, that means you can't use Mawika here. That means you can't brute force Mawika here. Once you've chosen your team for this, if you have the Lunar Shield here, you put it there. If you don't, your strongest remaining team goes here, and it's very possible that your strongest remaining team isn't good enough. And then here you put whatever grouper you have and the strongest synergistic team you can make here. Overall, this Stygian is, I mean, dare I say, worse than the last one by a significant amount, because Nefer and Zabai, characters that people might have gotten seeing the dog in last Stygian and thinking, as long as I have one Lunar character, I'm fine. struggle against the Flint's Chill quite a bit. Like, it's technically doable. My Might Zabai build isn't the best, so I'm sure a very, very good Zabai might be able to get through. Like, obviously, Zabai Binefa gets through without much of a problem, and Nefer can technically get through, but it's rough. It's really rough. Like, it's as difficult to get through this with Nefer or Zabai as it was getting through the dog with the non-lunar teams last patch. And basically, the level of difficulty is the same, but the restriction is narrower. I don't like this. I don't like power creep in general, and when the power creep is also done in a way where it's not just that all the new, like every new thing is stronger, is that even the stronger new things, as long as they're not the specific strong new thing, are still gonna struggle. It's just so awful. It makes you feel like you can't skip anyone, and I just hate that so much. I mean, you can skip Varka. And yeah, you might have noticed, by the way, there is a Varka on my account now. I don't want to talk about it. Mistakes were made. Friends were lost. I have no idea what I'm gonna do with the J account. That's not really the J account anymore. We might end up using cryo-infused Lynette. That's the levels of cooked I am. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but I hope you guys will. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, YouTube.
Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
Wait, isn't that the west area? Yeah, it is. I can just go here, maybe. Okay, let's see.
Hey. Hey.
Okay, so this is also out of bounds in a way. Because I have no clue how to get up there.
Hey.
come on.
Hey.
But I'm not sure if I even can use it as a platform. Looks like I can't.
Is an unfortunate line for this show, my favorite show to cross. At one point, the boys even acknowledge the problem.
South Park sucks now? Yeah, everyone knows it. South Park sucks now. And it's because of all this political shit.
But Trey kept going, and on one level, I get it. If he stopped, it might look like he caved to political intimidation and that precious free speech victory would feel compromised. However, that wasn't his reasoning. In an interview with the New York Times, Trey said, "It's not that we got all political, it's that politics became pop culture." Even though Trey is one of my idols, this rubbed me the wrong way. Perhaps he means that we live in a fragmented media landscape where politics is the last vestige of monocultural entertainment. But even if that's the case, which I'm not convinced it is, the equating of culture and politics is not something we should lean into or affirm. So about 6 episodes in, I stopped watching and releasing analysis videos because it felt like the show was no longer serving fans of irreverent comedy or even social satire. Now it was serving a much larger and sadly growing demographic, political hobbyists. When you relent that politics has become pop culture, you enter the realm of political hobbyism, and political hobbyism is not politics. It doesn't build power, it doesn't change institutions, and it doesn't strengthen democracy. In fact, it does the opposite. And I'd argue that a fundamental element of South Park has always been its suspicion of the marriage between culture and politics. And to collapse the two might just betray the very spirit of the show. Let's dive in. But first, a rapid-fire recap of the episodes. Trump, now more Saddam Hussein than Mr. Garrison, is back in office, and the national vibe has shifted accordingly. PC Principal has rebranded as Power Christian Principal, and Jesus is forcibly inserted back into school as the new counselor, where he slowly mutates into a caricature of MAGA-era postmodern Christianity. Satan reveals that he's pregnant with Trump's butt baby, while Minnie Vance works tirelessly to prevent the birth, fearing it would derail his ascent as Trump's successor. Randy loses Tegrity Farms after a bout of AI-induced psychosis, Trump begins an affair with Vance, and Stan has to move in with Grandpa. In the end, the butt baby Epsteins himself in the womb, Jesus has a come to Jesus moment, and Stan gets his old house back. The end. Your political preferences are premium data that enable corporations to map your viewing habits and then sell that profile to advertisers. That's why Venice file half divide book database switch. So check out Venism in his. And now back to the show. So what is political hobbyism? In his book, Politics is for Power, political scientist Eitan Hersh defines it as obsessive news following, constant online argumentation, slacktivism, and the compulsive production of hot takes in response to every daily flare-up. It's marked by hyper-emotional engagement and obsession with national politics, all sustained by shallow, technologically mediated activities that satisfy the short-term emotional needs of participants. Hobbyists like to justify their behavior with claims like, I'm staying informed, I'm raising awareness, or I'm holding power accountable, but Hersh's work builds a compelling case that it's more psychological addiction cosplaying as moral responsibility. At one point in the book, Hersh discusses a study about consumers of fake news. It turns out the majority of people who consume fake news aren't the people who actually believe it. It's the hobbyists who, after having scraped all the dopamine from the mainstream headlines, have to go for the harder stuff. It's pure degen behavior. Every time some D-list Trump goon came on screen, every time the show careened into the scandalous Drudge Report headline of the week, Don Jr.'s consultancy business, Pete Hegseth's social media content, it felt like this was the demographic the show was catering to, those who experience politics primarily through a daily technologically mediated dopamine loop. But thing is, that's not politics, that's culture. Politics is doing the hard work of canvassing, building party organizations, negotiating, and compromising in order to gain power. And one of Hersh's central arguments is that politics has gotten worse precisely because we've mistaken cultural signaling for political action. When politics becomes culture, we start demanding drama instead of competence, slacktivism flourishes, and cooperation across party lines becomes impossible. And what made this season especially frustrating is that the show has spent decades skewering these dynamics. Long before political hobbyism had a name, South Park was relentlessly suspicious of its defining traits: symbolic politics, moral grandstanding, and the substitution of expression for action.
So much better here with intellectuals, isn't it, boys?
A key feature of political hobbyism is that its commitment to consciousness raising is less about working for the common good and more about emotional payoff and personal expression.
New car? Yeah, it's a hybrid. I just couldn't sit back and be a part of destroying the Earth anymore.
Season 10's Smug Alert centers on the sudden popularity of hybrid cars and the cultural posturing that comes with them. What begins as Gerald's effort to raise awareness,
Look, I'm just trying to make the people of South Park aware of a very serious problem.
evolves into him moving the family to San Francisco so he can be among the people who enjoy expressive politics as much as he does.
We're a little more progressive and ahead of the curve here in San Francisco.
So important is cultural expression that eventually it undermines the stated political goal. The collective flatulent smugness manifests as a toxic cloud that undoes all the environmental progress they congratulated themselves for, and then some. After the smug threat is neutralized, Kyle admits that hybrid cars are essential to a healthy environment.
Look, hybrid cars are important. They may even save our planet one day.
If only people could drive hybrid cars without the moral posturing, but they can't.
You mean drive in hybrids, but not act like we're better than everyone else because of it?
Yeah!
I'm not ready.
I don't think I can do it either.
It's simply asking too much.
Clean energy is an urgent political issue, but it's the cultural expressive payoffs that really motivate engagement. When you strip away the cultural signaling, the political commitment collapses. Another element of political hobbyism is that it's distinct from political action. Politics is about doing, not feeling good. That's just culture.
Cleaning the earth is a mighty big chore. We're spreading awareness like never before.
In the season 3 episode Rainforest Schmain Forest, the boys are forced to join an activist choir and travel to Costa Rica to raise awareness about saving the rainforest.
Did you know over 10,000 acres of rainforest are bulldozed every year?
The leader, Miss Stevens, is the archetypal political hobbyist. Her group is performative, literally as in they sing songs, and she arrives in Central America armed with all the fashionable platitudes of the era. Her group paints the rainforest as a helpless victim in need of saving.
The rainforest is very delicate, and we must take steps to protect it.
She romanticizes the native tribe as peaceful and benevolent.
The Yanagapa are gentle, native people that live in the rainforest.
and even equates her moral posturing with the struggle of a rebel guerrilla faction.
We are fighters, just like you.
But turns out the reality isn't anything like the hobbyist fantasy. The rainforest is far from fragile, it's brutal.
That fragile flower is very delicate, okay?
The natives aren't so civilized.
Look how they live in peace with all living things.
Run for your lives, children! Holy crap!
And the actual political actors, the People's Army risking their lives, are nothing like Miss Stevens.
You white Americans make me sick. You waste food, oil, and everything else because you're so rich, and then you tell the rest of the world to save the rainforest because you like its pretty flowers.
Faced with reality, Miss Stevens eventually breaks.
I was wrong! The rainforest! I hate it! I hate it!
And in the end, doesn't care at all.
I hate the rainforest. You go right ahead and plow down this whole thing.
Political hobbyists love the idea of a cause, but not the reality of it. The aesthetic of saving the rainforest is compelling, but actually facing its dangers, engaging with local people, and navigating real political conflict is something else entirely. Moral posturing from a distance is a luxury hobby, and at least to me, South Park is at its best when it sides with and caters to the people who don't have that luxury.
We work and we make cigarettes all highty-lighty day, so folks can get a breaky from their stressful lighty lives and relaxy with the cigarettes we make all day and night.
In Season 7's Butt Out, the kids take up smoking to ensure they don't become like a cringe anti-smoking troop and accidentally burn down the school. This attracts the attention of the wildly unhealthy Rob Reiner, who catastrophizes about the effects of smoking and is willing to do anything, including killing Cartman, to ban cigarettes in South Park.
We're gonna use these children to bring the tobacco company down!
The episode wasn't just about the irony of a man who may have an overeating problem lecturing others about unhealthy behavior, but how using social problems as a platform for moral grandstanding is very much a luxury pastime, a favorite of the Hollywood elite. At one point, Reiner berates a man for smoking in a bar.
Look, man, I work 14 hours a day at the sawmill. I just got off work and I need to relax.
Well, when I relax, I just go to my vacation house in Hawaii.
In some ways, this was hard to revisit because Rob Reiner wasn't a political hobbyist. He actually did put in the work and was a goated director, RIP. But what always spoke to me about this episode is it's a perfect example of the show taking the side of the people that Hollywood has forgotten about culturally. The people who don't worship celebrities, who see them as too overpaid and overprotected to moralize about how others cope with life. If smoking functions as a psychological fixation for people with hard lives, then political hobbyism is a psychological fixation for people with easy ones. Because, as Hirsch's analysis revealed, the people most affected by politics, i.e. the working poor, are not the ones obsessing over it. They don't have the time or energy to live inside the news cycle. Only people with relatively comfortable lives can treat a cigarette, a tweet, or a cable news scandal as a crisis. The point is, I promise you there are people working 2 jobs right now that don't know Pete Hegseth makes online content like a teenager, or that the Attorney General has been sucking up to the president, but loved Jennifer Lopez singing about tacos and burritos. Making fun of political hobbyism is very South Park. Feeding it isn't. And what's most disappointing is that the show had been on a streak of focusing on class issues more recently. In the pandemic special, Randy is raking in cash at Tegrity Farms.
We've shut down and people have lost their businesses, lost their livelihoods. I also own a small business, and I have to say, I'm actually doing pretty good.
Even seizing the opportunity to sell a special strain while everyone else toils through trying times.
People are dying, Randy, and all you can think about is making a special about it?
This is a thinly veiled confession from Trey that, as his net worth exceeds 10 figures, he struggles with the guilt of his class privilege. In a time of widespread struggle, he's making more money than ever, and the only thing he can offer is a comedy special. Here, as always, he wants to help the working poor. A whole season about weekly political flare-ups is not that. Or in the Ozempic special, Cartman drops what is probably the best South Park line in the last decade.
Rich people get Ozempic, poor people get body positivity.
Elites get material results, everyone else gets fun narratives. Another way to say this is to draw from another seminal work about the intersection of politics and cultural expression, Murray Edelman's 1985 book, The Symbolic Uses of Politics, in which he claimed, and I'm paraphrasing, the disorganized masses get symbolic reassurances, elites organize and get results. Edelman's point was, for most, politics is a series of rituals, symbols, and dramas that help people cope with uncertainty, while actual decision-making and resource allocation is decided by the small group of elites who have the time and means to drive their agenda. And so, as long as the rich keep feeding people drama and narrative, the process can hum along. Political hobbyism is that drama, the result of conflating politics and culture. It's a leisure activity that, according to Hirsch, is disproportionately taken up by upper middle class educated white men. Basically, Gregory. And this was never a show for Gregory. Political hobbyism neither helps the demographic the people of South Park represent, nor does it speak to the people that South Park has historically defended. It's not what they spend their time caring about. There's a popular strain of thought that after a certain age, people should grow out of their silly fandom. They should stop collecting Pokemon cards, stop painting Warhammer figures, stop playing video games, stop watching anime, and grow up. Focus on more serious things like the news of the day. But, as Hirsch argues, there's no meaningful difference. Both political hobbyism and fandoms are inwardly focused leisure activities that people adopt purely for psychological reasons. So, don't wear your awareness of daily scandals as virtuous, don't cast your political anxiety as some kind of martyrdom, and don't condemn gaming at 40 as indulgent and trivial. Neither you nor Trey need to feel the obligation to focus only on politics. Yes, proving that political free speech still exists is super important. I'm not saying lay off Trump. God knows he deserves the smoke. Just maybe don't make it every episode. Maybe don't dive headfirst into the D-list of MAGA goonery. Maybe don't write plots that are only funny if you check Drudge Report 100 times a day. It narrows the audience, dulls the humor, and I'd argue betrays the core ethos of the show. Now, it could be argued that the things South Park lampooned before, anti-smoking activism, saving the rainforest, weren't the emergency that the crises of today are. And maybe that's true. But if Trey really believes that, then his greatest capacity to make a difference isn't his writing talent, it's his wealth. As a billionaire, he's one of the few people who actually has a significant finger to lift. He's got the time, he's got the resources, he's got the leverage. Because, lest we forget, in the South Park movie, Wendy dumps Gregory because she realizes she was just swept up in his drama. Stan, on the other hand, took action. Stan started La Resistance. Stan got himself blown up. Stan led the team to liberate Terrence and Phillip. Gregory did culture. Stan did politics.
Stan, I never really cared for Gregory. You didn't? No, dude. Gregory. Him right in the ear. Yay!
Hey, y'all, thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out Venice.ai. You can get 20% off a pro plan at Venice.ai/Jared Bauer with the code Jared Bauer. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel because the next video I got coming up is on The Exorcist. Thanks again, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
That looks like something nice. If I'm not seeing things.
Yep, I see it too.
That's kind of...
Beautifully done! I'm amazed!
You flatter me.
10.4. 10.8. Okay. Ah.
Beautifully done! I'm amazed!
Other judges in the same district, or sometimes to his own past orders. It's almost as if these judges are creating a record for the public and for higher courts when it's their turn to assess all this illegality. Amid this ocean of footnotes, Judge Goodwin wrote, "This court and other judges in this district have now ruled in numerous cases that discretionary detention without individualized custody determinations violates the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause. In each case, the government has presented no factual dispute and no legal argument beyond those this court has previously rejected." The judge made clear that federal courts would not tolerate that pattern. If officials continue to ignore constitutional requirements or court rulings, Judge Goodwin warned that he would not hesitate to use his full authority to enforce compliance, including injunctive relief prohibiting detention without individualized custody determinations, contempt proceedings against officials who defy this court's orders or constitutional rules.
I'm bringing. Fighting in an actual battle is really different from studying combat videos. And I've made massive improvements by surviving all those trips in the frontier, right? Too easy. Give me a proper challenge.
I guess. I didn't feel like I will need more than one of those. Combustion or electrification? Ugh.
Monetary sanctions against responsible officials, and any other such other relief as may be necessary to vindicate constitutional rights and enforce this court's rulings. So no matter if you live in a Democratic-led state like Minnesota or a Republican-led state like West Virginia or elsewhere, judges are fed up all the same. And part of the problem lies with one of the most disastrous Supreme Court decisions in recent memory. Why are so many judges losing it? The answer may lie with a Supreme Court decision issued last year. In his first day back in office, President Trump issued an executive order attempting to deny birthright citizenship to certain children born in the United States. District courts blocked the policy, citing more than a century of Supreme Court precedent and the very text of the Constitution. And those courts didn't just block the policy for the people who filed the lawsuits, They blocked it nationwide. This is what's called a universal injunction, and federal courts have used them for quite some time. I remember covering them during the Obama years, when a federal policy is unconstitutional everywhere, not just for one plaintiff. But the Supreme Court said that this practice went too far. In Trump v. Casa, the court held that district courts usually cannot block a federal policy for the entire country. Instead, they can only give relief to the parties in the case, and just enough to give those plaintiffs complete relief. The majority said that this was about history, that nationwide injunctions weren't common in 1789, so courts shouldn't be using them right now. So instead of ruling on birthright citizenship, the court issued a procedural ruling that guaranteed more litigation and more uncertainty. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson warned exactly what would happen next. It's a gash in the
Алло. Да, удобно, привет. Ну, ее сейчас дома нет. И телефон она, похоже, оставила. думаю, я смогу. Ну да. Я думаю, да. Не могу. От меня тогда передавай поздравления. До свидания. Пока-пока.
Basic tenets of our founding charter that could turn out to be a mortal wound. Make no mistake, today's ruling allows the executive to deny people rights that the founders plainly wrote into our Constitution, so long as those individuals have not found a lawyer or asked the court in a particular manner to have their rights protected. This perverse burden shifting cannot coexist with the rule of law. If courts can't stop unconstitutional policies nationwide, the same policy can be struck down in one place and still be enforced everywhere else. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Because once nationwide injunctions are off the table, every federal policy has to be challenged over and over again, and piecemeal litigation. That's one reason federal judges are lashing out, and why more than 1,000 lawsuits were filed in Minnesota alone against a single operation. It's not like these judges became liberal activists overnight. No, they're just frustrated that the Supreme Court and the government have pushed the judiciary to a breaking point. Case in point, the government's policy of detaining people without bond hearings that federal courts say the law requires. According to a Reuters review of federal court records, hundreds of federal judges have now ruled thousands of times that ICE detained people unlawfully. In fact, more than 400 federal judges have issued more than 4,400 rulings finding those detentions illegal since the policy changed. Those rulings come from judges appointed by presidents of both parties. Some were appointed by Donald Trump himself. But because of Trump v. Casa and the swift action needed to set a person free, those rulings generally apply only to the individual plaintiffs in each case. You can't make a person who needs their freedom back today file a class action lawsuit, which is what Casa calls for now. That's just impossible. So the same legal question keeps coming back. It looks like this. A detainee files a habeas petition, a court orders release. Another detainee files the same petition, another court orders release, over and over again. And eventually, judges start losing their patience. Now, all of this brings us back to where we started, with Judge Bryan and U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen in Minnesota. At the March 3rd hearing, Judge Bryan left open the possibility of incarceration for Rosen. I haven't ruled out the consequence of imprisonment. Rosen argued with Judge Bryan and frequently talked over him, which is something you cannot do with a federal judge. But Rosen kept on, accusing the judge of smearing him. Eventually, Rosen told Judge Bryan that in 2 cases, the government lost the petitioner's property. At least 12 other cases were resolved. The lawyers for the former detainees argued that the government should still be held in contempt for losing property and not following court orders. Rosen eventually took the witness stand himself. As attorney Dan Suter, who live-blogged this, pointed out, it is exceedingly rare for a sitting U.S. attorney to take the witness stand to be interrogated about his cases. Indeed, the government routinely fights tooth and nail to not have top officials testify in open court. Something presumption of regularity? Now, with that out the window, Rosen said he didn't think the government needed to do anything different to ensure compliance with court orders. He also said there was actually nothing that the government could have done to prevent loss of property in 2 of the cases. It was just a human error. Judge Bryan asked Rosen point blank if he knew how many orders to show cause the courts have issued in these habeas cases. Rosen guessed maybe 100. Now, 100 orders to show cause would be bad, very bad. But the true number is probably much higher. On the stand, Rosen was evasive about specific instances of lost property. He also claimed that the judge had no right to consider prior instances of noncompliance, such as shipping people to Texas against court orders. Well, he does, though. He's a judge, and that's what judges are paid to do. The hearing ended with Rosen saying that there's no contempt and that contempt is far beyond what we see today. We don't know what the outcome of this hearing will be, but it is certainly possible that Judge Bryan will hold a sitting U.S. attorney in contempt. Many thanks to Daniel Suter for sitting through this hearing and blogging it, in addition to his work training lawyers to suit up for these habeas claims.
Now, all this highlights why it's so important to get a great lawyer when you're dealing with your own case. Now, after I started this channel, every week I'd get hundreds of comments and emails from viewers who are dealing with legal problems, and they'd ask, can you help me find a lawyer? How do I know if this attorney is any good? And there's a massive gap in our justice system. It's that people don't know how to find the right lawyer for their specific situation. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, and they end up doing nothing or hiring the first attorney who calls them back. And that really bothered me. So I started to wonder, what if there was a different way? What if we could build a law firm that actually lived up to the values that I talk about on this channel? Transparency, accessibility, and putting clients first instead of chasing billable hours. A firm where you don't need to pay anything up front, and your lawyers only get paid if you do, to maximize your opportunity for justice. So a few years ago, I decided to fix that problem. I decided to start my own personal injury law firm. And honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. But I realized I was in this unique position. I had this platform, this community, and the experience. Not to get rich, trust me, there are easier ways to make money than starting a law practice. But we did it because access to justice shouldn't be a luxury. Because finding the right legal representation shouldn't feel like playing Russian roulette with your future. And when you work with my firm, you're not just getting a lawyer. You're getting a team that understands.
Да, алло. Да, я слышал. Без лица. Ладно, спасибо. Давай до связи. Ну, в смысле, ну ты же маме позвонишь, я услышу.
That behind every case is a real person with real stakes. If we can't represent you or you're in a state where we don't practice, we'll take the time to try to match you with an attorney in my personal network of lawyers. A national network of some of the best lawyers in the country who actually specialize in what you're going through, located right where you are, not just whoever happens to be available. So if you're dealing with a personal injury, a car crash, a data breach, sexual harassment, a social security or workers' comp issue, give us a call at the number on screen or click on the link below. Now, I can't represent everyone that watches this channel. I wish I could, but what I can do is make sure that when you need legal help, you have somewhere to turn to that you can trust. So whether it's me handling your case or the incredible attorneys we've partnered with, you'll get the same principles of honesty and education that we bring to every video. And if you're dealing with a legal issue and you're not sure where to start, check out the link in the description. Let's have a conversation about how we can help you find not just a lawyer, but the right lawyer for your situation. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making sure that when life gets complicated, you don't have to face it alone. Which is why when you need a lawyer, you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.
Has the discovery of a new fossil cranium rewritten our understanding of human evolution?
Arknight's Enfield's character
That was quick. Oh. Oh. Kinda fucked up. At least I hope I did. Just a tiny bit. Just a little bit. Do-do-do.
криптовалюта, но не знается без пользовательской карты.
Здравствуйте, Екатерина Михайловна.
Добрый день.
Хочется обсудить с вами 8 марта не только потому, что вы женщина и женщина известная.
Идентифицирую себя как женщина.
Да, но и потому, что вы часто говорите про важность институтов. А этот праздник один из самых стойких институтов. Все правильно?
Абсолютно точно. Всякие повторяющиеся поведенческие практики — это институты.
Трудно любить гендерные праздники, малоосмысленные, коммерческие и смутно оскорбительные для обеих сторон, написали вы в 2020 году. А вы сейчас, в 2026 году, все еще думаете так же?
В общем, да, но сейчас мне несколько полегче, потому что я не нахожусь в российском контексте, или, точнее говоря, я не работаю ни в какой российской организации, и поэтому этим принудительным коммерческим поздравлениям я уже не подвергаюсь. В Европе 8 марта в большей степени сохраняет, тем более в Германии, стране, скажем так, традиционно левых симпатий, не полностью, но частично в некоторых своих частях. Так вот, в большей степени этот праздник сохраняет свой первоначальный смысл Дня борьбы за равноправие, борьбы за права. То есть это праздник такой правозащитный, опять же, несколько левацкий, нравится это кому-то или наоборот, кого-то это отвращает, но это, по крайней мере, явно не тот день, когда женскую часть какого-то трудового коллектива призывают оставаться всегда такими же очаровательными и дарят им какую-то жеваную мимозу. Это, конечно, была не самая приятная часть любого трудового опыта на Руси. А тут этого нет. С другой стороны, как житель Берлина нынешний, не могу не высказать своего огорчения по поводу того, что в этом году 8 марта не перекинулось на понедельник. 8 марта будет воскресенье, и никакого, как это называется у немцев, брюкентага нам не полагается в связи с этим. Брюкентаг — это, для незнающих сообщу, если вдруг есть незнающие среди аудитории вашей радиостанции, это день мост. То есть это переход выходного дня на рабочий день, если праздник выпадает на выходные. Иногда такое случается, но в этом году нет, а жаль.
Уроки немецкого с Екатериной Михайловной Шульман. А вот вы упомянули, что здесь, в Германии, праздник сохраняется в своем более-менее первоначальном виде. А мы могли бы попробовать определиться, что было его первоначальным смыслом? Что празднуется в Германии и во что этот праздник, не побоюсь этого слова, выродился в России?
Я, с вашего позволения, не буду излагать историю 8 марта своими словами и рассказывать вам про Клару Цеткину и Розу Люксембург, но давайте поймем главное. Советская власть восприняла этот праздник, так сказать, и приняла его на грудь по той причине, что это связывало ее с европейским левым интернационалом, с европейской традицией борьбы, которую называлась в советской историографии национально-освободительной. Напомню, что советская власть была одной из первых, одной из очень ранних, скажем так, в Европе и в мире, кто распространил на женщин всеобщее избирательное право. К тому моменту, когда это произошло в 18 году, это было совсем еще нетипичной практикой, и борьба суфражисток за их дело совершенно еще не увенчалась какой-то универсальной победой. Правда, советская власть дала это право, я назвала только что это распространением всеобщего избирательного права на женщин, но в первой советской конституции не было никакого всеобщего избирательного права. Значительная категория жителей Советской России относилась к так называемым лишенцам. И они, соответственно, не обладали ни активным, ни пассивным избирательным правом, не могли ни голосовать, ни быть избранными. Всеобщее избирательное право появилось только в Конституции 1936 года. И тоже, как вы понимаете, заря демократии тогда не просияла над Советским Союзом. Тем не менее, советский проект на начальном своем этапе мыслился как модернистский, как прогрессистский и освободительный. Поэтому женщину от домашнего рабства и от гнета патриархальной власти советский режим тоже собирался освобождать. Соответственно, это, так сказать, общая часть, а такая часть более конкретная, непосредственно относящаяся к Германии. Опыт германской революции тоже, соответственно, был дорог и пропагандистски ценен для власти советской, поэтому, собственно, вот эти вот две героини, Клара Цеткина и Роза Люксембург, вошли как родные буквально в каждую советскую голову, поэтому кондитерская фабрика называлась «Ротфронт», в общем, много чего всякого другого было оттуда заимствовано для создания того впечатления глобальности, если не социалистических революций, то, по крайней мере, социалистических коммунистических устремлений, которая была так важна для советского проекта. То есть что мы не одни такие, а мы авангард движения человечества к освобождению. Поэтому, собственно говоря, вот эти вот, поэтому 8 марта, поэтому красные гвоздики, поэтому вот эта эстетика была советской властью акцептирована, апроприирована, я бы даже сказала, и далее использовалась. Когда выветрился этот дух из советского праздника? Ну, не знаю, для этого нужно какое-то более подробное антропологическое исследование. Я думаю, что это на самом деле нетрудно сделать даже по вот такой официальной иконографии, по открыткам, по лозунгам, которые рассылались централизованно для всяких мероприятий. Можно, наверное, нащупать некоторый момент, когда, ну, скажем, из этой иконографии ушла мускулистая женщина, работница или женщина, которая там отрекается от религии или которая идет работать на завод вместо того, чтобы щи варить на дому, и появляются уже исключительно гвоздики и мимозы, и, собственно, вот этот вот оттенок такого советского Дня Святого Валентина начинает наползать на публичное отправление этого советского ритуала. Но я вот думала, что это должно было произойти где-то после 60-х годов, когда советская действительность все больше тривиализируется или гуманизируется. Это часто сочетанные, как это называется у медиков, процессы, когда весь этот советский футуризм и прогрессизм как-то более-менее сходят на нет. В общем, праздники перестают быть хоть сколько-нибудь революционными и по духу, и по форме, и встраиваются в некий естественный годовой календарь. Мы, кстати, видим и сейчас, как это происходит, когда, например, там, не знаю, 9 мая — это очевидная такая светская Пасха. Это день, когда ездят на кладбище к родителям, к родственникам, кладбище, там, могилки чисто убирают. Вот это вот такой день. А, скажем, там, ноябрьские праздники — это дни, когда последний раз на даче убираются тоже и закрывают дачу на зиму, соответственно, для того, чтобы в начале майских праздников туда поехать и открыть новый дачный сезон с шашлыками. В этом отношении вот эта гендерная пара, которую я назвала в сердцах смутно оскорбительной для обеих сторон, 23 февраля, 8 марта, это действительно, с одной стороны, некоторый хронологически размазанный российский постсоветский День Святого Валентина, когда представители двух гендеров поздравляют друг друга и как бы несколько друг с другом кокетничают. Девочки поздравляют мальчиков, мальчики поздравляют девочек. На День Святого Валентина, как известно, птичка выбирает себе пару. Ну, вот тут можно в ходе этих поздравлений тоже как-нибудь пару себе присмотреть, ежели ее нету. А с другой стороны, это некоторый аналог японского Дня девочек и Дня мальчиков, когда подрастающие поколения утверждаются в своей гендерной социализации. Девочка — это та, которую поздравляют на 8 марта, мальчик — это тот, кого поздравляют на 23 февраля. Я вам это описываю не для того, чтобы как-то проклясть эти практики, и не хуже никаких других. Они могут несколько, так сказать, задевать чей-то вкус, как в частности они задевали мой, но наш вкус и наши эстетические пристрастия не обязаны быть совершенно общим принципом, общим правилом. Ничего специфически дурного в этом нет. В этом есть некоторый элемент вульгарности, как почти во всем коллективном. Ну и что же из этого? Вульгарность, она же, как Пушкин бы сказал, народность, она необходима для того, чтобы люди как-то могли жить между собой и поступать более-менее одинаково.
Ну а нет ли в 8 марта торжества патриархата на отдельно взятой территории? Когда мужчина говорит женщине: вот, я тебе компенсирую отсутствие некоторых прав и свобод мимозой, ну или еще чем-нибудь. Посуду помыл в этот день, например. А дальше отстань.
Ну, вы знаете, если с этой точки зрения смотреть, то праздник 23 февраля еще страшнее. Сейчас я, дорогой, тебе подарю носки, а потом тебя погонят умирать. Так что тут можно ужаснуться довольно-таки много чему. Я уже сказала опять же, про некоторый налет пошлости, в смысле обыденности. На всем этом, конечно, налет этот присутствует. То есть это явно не тот праздник, который кто-то бы из интеллигентных людей стал отмечать в кругу своей семьи внезапно. Но это и такой публичный праздник. Понимаете, есть семейные дни, на которые люди собираются. Это там свадьбы, память умерших своих, дни рождения и так далее, какие-то частные даты. А есть такие общественные. А для постсоветского всего вот этого, так сказать, людского моря, всего этого социального пространства есть, пожалуй, раньше было 2, а теперь осталась только одна точка в году, когда частная и государственная сходятся, не конфликтуя. Это Новый год. Раньше это было еще и 9 мая, но 9 мая и все связанные с ним ритуалы апроприировало государство, поглотило и съело. Использовала этот социальный капитал для того, чтобы легитимизировать свои политические цели. И все, он потрачен, его больше нет. Вот этого дня, так сказать, Дня народного единства в 9 мая больше нет. Одни празднуют одно, другие не празднуют вообще ничего. Опять же, больше всего шансов на социальное выживание у тех, кто просто ездит на кладбище в этот день, уже не связывая это никак специфически с войной. Но